Hi there, welcome back to the Garage for another Garage Theology. This week looking at Luke 21, 5 to 9. I always give my sermons titles generally just for my own accounts, but this week's title is It's Probably Going to Be Bad. Don't worry about it. I encourage you to go and read the Bible passage. It's Jesus is in Jerusalem with his disciples, and they're walking through Jerusalem, and he begins to talk to them about what life is going to be like. And I think it's quite normal this time of year, coming towards, we're getting into winter, it's properly cold here for the first time, to start thinking about the year we've just had. And perhaps you've had things that have been great or things that have been challenging. And perhaps you're looking ahead to next year. Is next year going to be better? Is next year going to be worse? AI or climate change or immigration or, politics in general, or the state of any number of things. These sort of ghouls from the news can haunt us a bit, and we wonder what's the life going to be like next year. And the truth is that Scripture isn't massively positive about the future. And in this passage, Jesus doesn't give us any sort of indications that there's reason to be like, yeah, it's all going to be sunny and wonderful. But what Jesus does do here is he gives us the information we need to live with our ignorance about the future. We don't know what's coming next, but we can know that Jesus is with us, and that's what this story is about. And it starts off with Jesus and his disciples walking through Jerusalem, and they come to the temple, and the disciples look at the temple and they're like, look at the size of these massive stones. And it seems like they are sort of a bit overwhelmed by the temple. And I think in order to understand Jesus' response to them, it's worth noting the context, which is that the temple that they're walking past it's the second temple, but it's been refurbished at this point by Herod the Great in about 20 years BC. So maybe 40, 50 years before this is happening, that the work was finished or started even. And so Jesus is walking through, and his disciples are saying lots of nice things about the temple built by Herod the Great. And Herod the Great, if you don't make the connection, is the same guy who tries to kill Jesus, and in order to do so kills all the young boys in Bethlehem when Jesus is born. And I'm sure Jesus knows this story. I'm sure his parents would have told him why they'd been in Egypt before going to Nazareth when Joseph's family come from Bethlehem. And so Jesus is walking through Herod the Great's temple, and his disciples are talking about how amazing it is. And he responds basically saying, this place is not going to last. We know it's 40 years it doesn't last, but he says that all these stones are going to be knocked one from another. And I think the lesson of this first part of this story is you can't trust in things made by human hands. The stones there are vast in size, and yet not long from now they will be fallen from one from another. And where we put our hope in bricks and mortar, where we put our faith in nation states, where our love, is put in the works of our hands, there will always be disappointment. Nation states rise and fall, buildings rise and fall. To a certain extent, relationships rise and fall. Whatever we make will one day be broken. Only Jesus is eternal. And for me, the first point to accept when looking at the future of all things is it's only Jesus that we can trust in. And then as they're talking, it says this, verse 7, Teacher, they asked, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they're about to take place? He replied, watch out that you are not deceived, for many will come in my name, claiming, I am he, and this time is near. Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and uprisings, do not be frightened. These things must happen first, but the end will not come right away. Then he said to them, nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, famine, and pestilence in various places, and fearful events, and great signs from heaven. And I think asking when is definitely the right question, definitely the question I would ask. Interestingly, we don't know if it was the disciples or the crowd who asked it, because it's kind of about, how much do we trust Jesus if we need a date? So interestingly, it's not clear whether the disciples are that distinct from the crowd at this point. And Jesus is making several very important things. The first of all, if you ever hear someone saying that Jesus will return on the 3rd of March 2027, right, you know that person is not a good teacher. You know, because Jesus says the time is near. He says, do not follow them. Do not follow anyone who says they know when Jesus is coming back. If you hear a preacher ever say they know when Jesus is coming back, that person is a false teacher. You should probably stop listening to them, unless you like false teaching just for giggles. So first of all, don't listen to anyone who does that. They're a false prophet. But I think more practically, perhaps, Jesus wants to understand that some things are not for us to know ever. And the world is going to look messy. Between now and him returning, the world is going to look messy. And we see it in the world around us. We see, what's the list there? Won't happen straight away. Nation will rise against nation. Yes, we see that today. Kingdom against kingdom. I mean, I'm not sure if Britain and Spain are that much beef right now, but yes, I think we can take that's true. There will be great earthquakes. We see those, thankfully not regularly, but we do see them. Famines, yes, still ongoing. Pestilence, and COVID has come to an end, but there are still diseases ravaging people around the world. Fearful events and great signs from heaven. So, I mean, thunderstorms are scary, hurricanes are scary. That might be what they're referring to here. But the point is that Jesus says the world is going to be messy. And it is. And that should be an encouragement. So the next time some great calamity comes along, doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It doesn't mean the world is outside of God's control. It doesn't mean that the second coming is 5 minutes away. It just means that Jesus was right when he said what the world would be like. And if all that sounds a bit rough, the good news is it is about to get worse. Verse 12. But before all this, they will seize you and persecute you. They will hand you over to the synagogues and put you in prison, and you will be brought before kings and governors, and all on account of my name. And you will bear testimony to me. And so you will bear testimony to me. But make up your mind not to worry beforehand how you will defend yourselves. For I will give you the words and wisdom that none of your adversaries will be able to resist or contradict. You will be betrayed by parents, brothers and sisters, relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. Everyone will hate you because of me, but not a hair on your head will perish. Stand firm, and you will win life. So having declared that the timing is a mystery that we will not ever know, Jesus then says, but before then, so the time like in the last days, which is now, you will be persecuted on account of me. And we see this image of the followers of Jesus being persecuted by those closest to them. And interestingly, like a few weeks ago, we were talking about love your enemies as yourself, that call of Jesus to treat everyone we meet as close family. And here, everyone who we would consider close family is a danger of betraying you. That reshaping that Jesus done, where we're supposed to embrace church as family rather than any other unit as family, because only the church won't betray us for Jesus. But you will be betrayed, and so you will find yourself in front of kings and governors, and we see all this happen in Acts, and it still happens. And there's an invitation here. You know, when you get arrested, don't try and weasel your way out of it. Don't be like, oh no, Jesus, I've never heard of him, don't know what you're talking about. It's double down. Jesus said, double down on my name. When you're in front of the king, tell him about me. He needs to know. When you're in front of the governor, tell him about me. He needs to know. You know, when you're dragged into the synagogue, tell them about me. They need to know. Wherever Christians are persecuted, they're told by Jesus here to double down on their testimony of Jesus and stand firm for his name. What we're not told to do is prepare for that. We're never told, so you're going to be arrested, so it's worth having a really good argument in favour of why you believe in me. Actually, what Jesus says is, decide now you're not going to prepare. Rather, leave space open so that in your openness, I can give you the wisdom you need, and that I will give you the wisdom and the words. You know, arguments that no one can refute, no one can stand against. And there's a great joy there, because as a always like, I should be working hard, I should be preparing more. And Jesus says, but for this specific thing, you shouldn't be prepared. You should trust me when the moment comes. And then it's also quite clear that some people, no matter how good the arguments, are still going to be put to death. And again, there's a good break there that gives us freedom, which is, doesn't matter how good the person is, some people are going to be put to death and others not. We see in the book of Acts that some followers of Jesus are put to death and others not. And there's no sense in which, well, they probably didn't trust Jesus enough to properly give the words he gave. It's just sinful people are going to do sinful things, and people in the church are going to be victims of that. And it's not Jesus's fault. It's not your fault. It's their fault. And into that sort of, that's a bit of a gut punch. Jesus says, but not a hair of your head will perish. Stand firm and you will win life. And that hair in your head have been used by elsewhere Jesus to talk about how the Father knows us. Idea that that the Father will continue to know us. Even if we're put to death, the Father knows us. And so as we stand in him, we will have life. Our bodies may die and be buried. In fact, every generation before us, that's eventually happened. But we will have life. And therefore there's hope, even in the darkest of troubles. There's no way of knowing what next year will bring. There's no real way of knowing what tomorrow will bring. But that's not what Jesus' teaching here is about. The point of Jesus' teaching here is that he is coming back. And between him ascending and him coming back, there is going to be a long period of time in which it looks like the world is full of mess, because it is, and in which the church will struggle, and it has. But that Jesus is still, in charge. These are still part of God's plans, however much we don't understand them. That we can still trust in him, that as we stand firm in him, we can be sure he knows us and has life for us. It's not really the happiest of Bible passages. I don't feel like you'll walk away from this talk full of sunshine and lollipops. But the invitation here is not to think the world should be perfect. The invitation here is to recognise that the world is going to be broken and the world needs Jesus, and therefore to act. It's not to feel good about ourselves, it's to feel fired up, to feel motivated that, just over there are people who need Jesus. And they may want to see you dead, but they still need Jesus, so go and tell them about Jesus. Because Jesus loves them, and he's coming, and his justice is coming. So we don't need to worry about that side of things. We just need to worry about loving Jesus and following him. We cannot fail when we trust in Jesus. And I hope that's an encouragement to you for today. God bless. Goodbye.